The sound of my jaw cracking echoed louder than the plate shattering on the dining room floor. I stumbled back, clutching my face, the sting of my father's fist burning through me like wildfire. At 17, I thought I'd learned how to dodge his temper. But tonight, my words had been a match tossed into gasoline. It started over something stupid, me grades. Again, Dad sat at the head of the table, his broad shoulders hunched like a vulture over his untouched meatloaf. Mom was across from me, sipping her wine, her eyes darting between us like she was watching a tennis match she'd bet on. "You think you're smart, Ethan?" Dad growled, his fork stabbing the air. "C's and D's. You're wasting my money and your future." I should have kept my mouth shut. I knew better. But the weight of his disappointment, the way Mom's lips curled like she was already savoring my failure, pushed me over the edge. "Maybe if you didn't scream at me every night, I could focus," I snapped. The room went still. Dad's eyes darkened, and before I could blink, his fist collided with my face. Mom laughed, a sharp, jagged sound that cut deeper than the punch. "Now you'll learn to shut that mouth," she said, swirling her wine like it was just another Tuesday. My little sister, Lily, barely 14, froze at the table, her fork trembling in her hand. She didn't look up, didn't speak. She never did when Dad got like this. I staggered to my feet, blood trickling from my lip, my jaw throbbing like it was still ringing from the impact. "I'm done," I muttered, grabbing my jacket from the chair. Dad lunged forward, his voice booming. "You walk out that door. Don't come back." Mom just sipped her wine again, her smirk a silent agreement. Outside, the night air hit me like a slap, cold and sharp. I didn't know where I was going. My bike was still in the garage, and my phone was at 3%, but I couldn't stay. Not tonight. Not after that. My jaw ached with every step, but the real pain was deeper. A gnawing betrayal that Mom hadn't just stood bished laughed. She'd always been cold, but this was new. This was cruel. I ended up at the park a mile away, the one where Lily and I used to swing when we were kids. Back when Dad's temper was just loud words and Mom still pretended to care. The swings were empty now, creaking in the wind. I sat on one, the chains groaning under my weight, and tried to piece together what had just happened. My family wasn't perfect. Dad's rages, Mom's indifference, Lily's silence, but this felt like a breaking point. I touched my jaw, wincing, and wondered if I'd ever feel safe in that house again. The next morning, I didn't go home. I crashed at my friend Jake's place, his mom fussing over my bruise like it was her own kid's injury. "Ethan, you can't keep living like this," she said, pressing an ice pack to my face. I nodded. But what could I do? I was 17, no job, no money, and a sister still stuck in that house. Leaving felt like abandoning Lily, but staying felt like signing up for more fists and laughter. Jake's mom called the school counselor, Ms. Harper, who met me in her tiny office that smelled like lavender and regret. She was kind, but her questions were sharp, cutting through my defenses. "How long has this been going on, Ethan?" she asked, her pen poised over a notepad. I didn't want to talk, didn't want to admit how bad it was, but the bruise on my jaw spoke louder than I ever could. "Years," I mumbled, "but it's never been this bad." Ms. Harper didn't push, but she didn't let me off easy either. "You have options," she said. "You don't have to go back." Options. The word felt foreign, like it belonged to someone else's life. Foster care. A shelter. What about Lily? I couldn't leave her with them, not when she was already shrinking into herself. Her voice barely a whisper these days. That night, I snuck back home to grab some clothes and check on Lily. The house was quiet. Dad probably at the bar. Mom likely asleep with her wine-stained glass on the nightstand. Lily was in her room, curled up on her bed, her eyes red from crying. "I'm sorry," she whispered when she saw me. "I should have said something." "It's not your fault," I said, sitting beside her. Her small hand grabbed mine. And for a moment, we were just two kids trying to survive a storm we didn't create. I'm getting us out, I promised, though I had no idea how. Her eyes widened, hopeful but scared, and I hated how much she looked like trapped, bruised in ways no one could see. I left her room with a backpack stuffed with clothes and a plan I didn't have. The bruise on my jaw was darkening, an ugly purple spreading like a warning. I didn't know what came next, but I knew one thing. I wasn't going to let Dad's fists or Mom's laughter define me or Lily. Not anymore. The next few days were a blur of couch surfing and whispered plans. Jake's mom let me stay, but I could tell she was worried, her eyes lingering on my bruise like it was a ticking bomb. I avoided mirrors, not wanting to see the evidence of Dad's rage staring back at me. My phone buzzed with texts from Mom cold. Clipped messages like, "Come home, Ethan. Stop being dramatic." I didn't reply. How do you respond to someone who laughs when you're bleeding? School became my refuge, the one place where I could pretend things were normal. But even there, the cracks showed. My English teacher, Mr. Callahan, noticed me wincing when I opened my mouth to read aloud. "Everything okay, Ethan?" he asked after class, his voice gentle but firm. I shrugged, muttering something about a fight with a friend, but his frown said he wasn't buying it. I wondered how many teachers had seen the signs over the years and looked away. MS. Harper called me into her office again, this time with a social worker named MS. Delgado. She was younger than I expected, with sharp eyes and a clipboard that made me nervous. "Ethan, we need to talk about your safety," she said, her voice steady but not patronizing. "And your sisters." That hit me hard. Lily. I'd been so focused on my own survival. I hadn't thought enough about what this meant for her. Was Dad hitting her too? Was Mom's laughter aimed at her when I wasn't there? I told MS. Delgado, everything Dad's temper. Mom's cruelty. The way Lily had started fading into the background. It poured out of me. Words I'd never said aloud. Each one heavier than the last. When I finished, my throat was raw. And MS. Delgado's pen was still, her face unreadable. "We're going to help you," she said finally. "Both of you." Help. Another word that felt too big for my life. They talked about temporary foster care, about reporting Dad to the authorities. But all I could think about was Lily's face when I'd promised to get us out. Could I trust these people to keep her safe? Could I trust anyone? That night, I called Lily from Jake's phone, my own long dead. "You okay?" I asked, my voice low so I wouldn't wake Jake's family. She hesitated, then whispered, "Dad's mad you're gone. He broke your guitar." My stomach twisted. That guitar was the one thing I'd saved up for. A beat-up acoustic I'd played until my fingers bled. It wasn't just a thing, it was my escape. My proof I could make something beautiful out of nothing. Now it was gone, just like any hope of Dad changing. "We're leaving soon," I told her, my voice fiercer than I felt. "I'm working on it." She didn't ask how, just said, "Okay, Ethan," in that small, trusting voice that made me want to punch a wall. I hung up and stared at the ceiling, my jaw still aching, my mind racing. I needed a plan, not just promises. The next day, MS. Delgado took me to meet a lawyer who worked with kids in situations like mine. His name was Mr. Patel, and he had a calm way of talking that made the chaos in my head feel less overwhelming. "You're a minor, Ethan, but you have rights," he said, sliding a pamphlet across his desk. "We can file for emergency custody for you and Lily. Get you somewhere safe." Somewhere safe. The words sounded like a dream I didn't dare believe in. But there was a catch. Filing meant confronting Dad in court. Meant Mom testifying. Meant dragging Lily through a system that could chew her up and spit her out. I thought about her red eyes, her trembling hands, and wondered if I was strong enough to pull us both through this. Mr. Patel saw my hesitation. "You don't have to decide today," he said. "But the longer you wait, the harder it gets." I left his office with a headache and a folder full of legal terms I barely understood. Jake was waiting outside, tossing a baseball in the air like life was simple. "You good, man?" he asked. I shook my head. Not even close. He didn't push. Just walked with me to the park, where we sat on those same swings from the other night. "You're doing the right thing," he said after a while. "For Lily." I nodded. But inside, I was terrified. What if I failed her? What if I failed us both? The decision to fight for Lily and me came like a spark in the dark, small, fragile, but impossible to ignore. I told MS Delgado and Mr. Patel I wanted to move forward with the emergency custody filing. It felt like jumping off a cliff. No idea if there'd be water or rocks below. But every time I thought of Lily's whispered, "I'm sorry," or Mom's laugh slicing through the air, I knew I couldn't back down. The process was slow. Agonizingly so. MS Delgado explained that they'd need evidence, medical records of my bruise, witness statements, maybe even Lily's testimony. The thought of her standing in a courtroom, her small frame trembling under Dad's glare, made my stomach churn. But MS Harper was relentless, coordinating with the school nurse to document my injury and digging up old reports from teachers who'd noticed my behavior issues over the years. Behavior issues. That's what they called it when a kid flinches every time someone raises their voice. I went back to school, trying to act normal. But normal was a lie. Kids whispered when I walked by, their eyes lingering on the fading bruise. My friend Sarah, who'd always been quiet but kind, slipped me a note in history class. "You don't deserve this. Let me know how I can help." I didn't know how to respond, but I kept the note, tucking it into my pocket like a lifeline. At Jake's house, I spent nights researching foster care on his laptop, scrolling through stories of kids who'd escaped homes like mine. Some found families who loved them. Others bounced between houses, lost in a system that didn't care. The uncertainty gnawed at me, but I kept picturing Lily, her eyes bright with hope when I'd promised to save us. I had to believe we'd be one of the good stories. Then came the call from MS Delgado. "Your parents have been notified," she said, her voice careful. "They're not happy. Ethan, be prepared." Prepared for what? Dad's fists. Mom's venom. I didn't sleep that night, my mind replaying every fight, every scream, every time I told myself it wasn't that bad. It was that bad. It always had been. The confrontation came sooner than I expected. Dad showed up at Jake's house, banging on the door like he was trying to break it down. Jake's mom opened it, her face pale but firm. "You need to leave, Tom," she said, her voice steady despite the fear in her eyes. Dad's face was red, veins bulging in his neck. "Where's my son?" he roared. I stepped outside, my heart pounding, my jaw still tender. "I'm right here," I said, my voice shaking but loud. "And I'm not coming back." He lunged, but Jake's dad was there, stepping between us, his broad frame a wall. "Go home, Tom," he said, his voice low and dangerous. Dad cursed, spitting words I'd heard 1,000 times. But he left, tires screeching as he peeled out. Jake's mom hugged me, her arms trembling. "You're safe here," she said. But I didn't feel safe. I felt like a hunted animal, waiting for the next strike. The next day, MS Delgado took me to see Lily at school. She looked smaller than ever, her backpack dwarfing her thin shoulders. "They're fighting all the time now," she whispered when we were alone in the counselor's office. "Mom says it's your fault." My chest tightened. Of course she did. Mom had always been good at rewriting the story to make herself the victim. "I'm getting us out," I told Lily again, my voice fierce with a conviction I was still trying to believe. She nodded, but her eyes were distant, like she was already bracing for disappointment. I hated that look, hated that she'd learned to expect so little from the world. "I mean it," I said, gripping her hand. "You and me. We're going to be okay. That night, I wrote a letter to Lily, one I didn't know if I'd ever give her. It was messy, scrawled on notebook paper, but it poured out everything: how sorry I was for not protecting her sooner, how I'd never let her feel alone again. Writing it felt like a promise to myself, a vow that I'd be the brother she deserved, no matter what it took. The weeks before the custody hearing were a tightrope walk over a pit of snakes. Every day felt like waiting for Dad to show up again, his anger a storm that could break at any moment. I stayed at Jake's, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was dragging his family into my mess. His mom kept saying I wasn't a burden, but her tired eyes told a different story. Ms. Delgado was a machine, gathering evidence like she was building a fortress. She got a statement from the school nurse, who'd photographed my bruise and noted its inconsistent explanation. Dad's story about me falling didn't hold up. She also tracked down a neighbor who'd heard Dad's shouting matches through the walls for years. Each piece felt like a brick in a wall between me and that house. But it also made me sick with guilt. Was I betraying my family? Or was I saving it? Lily was struggling. I saw her at school, her smiles forced, her eyes darting like she was waiting for someone to yell. Ms. Harper arranged for her to talk to a therapist, but Lily hated it, saying it made her feel like a broken toy. I just want things to be normal, she told me one day, her voice cracking. Normal. I didn't even know what that word meant anymore. The hearing date loomed closer, and with it, the reality of facing Dad and Mom in court. Mr. Patel coached me on what to say, how to stay calm, but my nightmares were full of Dad's fist and Mom's laugh. Looping like a horror movie, I couldn't escape. I started writing music again, not on my guitar God. That still hurt, but on Jake's keyboard. Late at night when everyone else was asleep. The notes were raw, angry, sad, everything I couldn't say out loud. Then Mom called. I don't know why I answered. Maybe some part of me still hoped she'd apologize, that she'd be the mom I needed. Ethan, you're tearing this family apart, she said, her voice sharp but trembling. Come home. We can work this out. I gripped the phone, my jaw aching like it remembered her laughter. You laughed, Mom, I said, my voice breaking. He hit me, and you laughed. There was silence, then a click. She hung up. The day of the hearing arrived like a storm you see coming but can't outrun. I wore a borrowed button-up from Jake's dad, the collar scratching my neck. Lily was there, sitting beside Ms. Delgado, her hands twisting in her lap. Dad and Mom sat across the courtroom, Dad's face a mask of rage, Mom's expression cold, like she was above it all. The judge, an older woman with sharp eyes, called me to the stand first. I told the truth, every ugly detail. Dad's fists, Mom's cruelty, Lily's fear. My voice shook, but I didn't stop, not even when Dad's glare burned holes in me. When I finished, the judge asked if I felt safe at home. No, I said, my voice steady for the first time. And neither does Lily. Lily's turn was worse. She was so small up there, her voice barely audible as she described Dad's yelling, Mom's indifference. She didn't mention the punch, she hadn't seen it, but she talked about the fear, the way she'd hide in her room, praying the shouting would stop. I wanted to run to her, to shield her from the courtroom's cold light. But all I could do was sit and listen, my heart breaking with every word. The judge called a recess, and I hugged Lily outside the courtroom, her sobs soaking my shirt. You did good, I whispered, though it felt like a lie. Nothing about this felt good. Ms. Delgado put a hand on my shoulder. You're strong, Ethan, she said. Both of you. I didn't feel strong. I felt like a kid pretending to be brave, hoping the world wouldn't call my bluff. The courtroom felt like a pressure cooker, every word and glance adding to the heat. When Dad took the stand, he didn't look at me or Lily. His voice was low, controlled, like he'd rehearsed it. I've never laid a hand on my kids. He lied, his hands folded like a saint's. Ethan's always been trouble, disrespectful. defiant. He fell. That's all. The lie was so smooth. I almost believed it myself. But the ache in my jaw screamed the truth. Mom was worse. She didn't deny the punch, but spun it like I'd provoked it. Like I'd been asking for it my whole life. He's always pushing buttons, she said, her voice dripping with pity. Like she was the victim. We've done our best. The judge's face stayed neutral. But I saw her pen pause, her eyes narrowing. I hoped she saw through the act. Saw the woman who'd laughed while her son bled. The hearing stretched into hours. A parade of lies and half-truths. Ms. Delgado presented the evidence, the nurse's photos, the neighbor's statement, my teacher's reports. Dad's lawyer tried to poke holes, saying I was an unreliable narrator, a troubled teen with a grudge. It stung, but I kept my eyes on Lily, her small frame hunched in her chair. This wasn't about me anymore. It was about her. The judge's ruling came like a thunderclap. Temporary custody to the state, pending a full investigation. Lily and I would be placed in foster care together. Thank God, but not with Jake's family. They weren't licensed, and the system didn't bend. Dad's face turned purple. Mom's lips pressed into a thin line. But they didn't fight it. Not yet. As we left the courtroom, Lily grabbed my hand. Her grip so tight it hurt. We're free, she whispered, like she was testing the words. Free. It didn't feel like freedom. It felt like falling. No ground in sight. The foster home was a small, tidy house on the edge of town, run by a couple named the Wilsons. They were kind but cautious. Their smiles practiced, like they'd seen too many kids like us. The house smelled of cinnamon and laundry detergent, a stark contrast to the stale beer and tension of home. Lily clung to me that first night, her bed pushed close to mine in the shared room. Is this forever? She asked. I didn't know how to answer. Adjusting was hard. The Wilsons had rules, curfews, chores, therapy sessions. I hated the therapy at first, the way the counselor pried into my head. But Lily seemed to open up, her voice getting stronger with each session. I watched her draw pictures in art therapy, bright colors spilling across the page, and felt a flicker of hope. Maybe she could heal. Maybe we both could. School was different now. The whispers had turned to pity, and I hated that more than the gossip. Sarah stuck by me, bringing me snacks and notes. Her quiet presence a reminder that not everyone saw me as broken. Jake, too, was a rock, sneaking me into his band practices to play keyboard, letting me lose myself in music. It wasn't my guitar, but it was something. But the shadow of Dad and Mom lingered. They had a chance to appeal, to fight for custody. And Ms. Delgado warned me they might. Your dad's hired a new lawyer, she said one day, her voice heavy. He's claiming he's changed. Changed. The word tasted like ash. I remembered his fist, Mom's laugh, the shattered guitar. People don't change that fast. Not when they don't think they're wrong. I started writing again. Not just music, but a journal. Pages filled with everything I couldn't say. It was messy, raw, full of anger and grief. But it helped. One night, I showed a page to Lily, a poem about breaking free. She read it, her eyes shining, and said, "You should be a writer, Ethan." For the first time in weeks, I laughed. Maybe I could be. Maybe I could be anything, now that I wasn't under Dad's fist. Months passed, and the foster home started to feel less like a holding cell and more like a place we could breathe. Lily smiled more, her drawings covering the walls of our room, bursts of color that made the space ours. The Wilsons were patient, teaching us how to cook, how to trust again. But trust was hard, like learning to walk after breaking a leg. Every creak in the house made me tense, waiting for Dad's voice to shatter the quiet. The appeal hearing was coming, and with it, the fear that we'd be sent back. Ms. Delgado was blunt. Dad was attending anger management classes. Mom was in therapy, and their lawyer was painting them as reformed parents desperate to reunite their family. It was a performance, and I wasn't buying it. But the system wasn't about truth, it was about proof. And I didn't know if we had enough. I threw myself into school, into music, into keeping Lily safe. My grades climbed. Not because I cared about college, but because I needed to prove I wasn't the failure Dad said I was. Mr. Callahan noticed, slipping my essays back with comments like, "You've got a voice. Ethan, use it." I started writing more. Stories and poems. Each one a piece of the anger and hope I carried. Lily was changing too. She joined the art club, her shy smile growing bolder as kids praised her work. One day, she showed me a painting of two birds flying out of a cage, their wings bright against a stormy sky. "That's us," she said, her voice steady. I hugged her, my throat tight. She was stronger than I'd ever been, and it made me want to be better. The appeal hearing was a battlefield. Dad looked different, clean-shaven, in a suit, his eyes soft like he'd practiced remorse in a mirror. Mom was polished, her tears perfectly timed as she talked about missing us. "We've made mistakes," she said, her voice breaking. "But we're better now." I wanted to scream, to tell the judge about the guitar, the laugh, the years of fear. Instead, I sat, my hands clenched, as Mr. Patel presented our case. Lily spoke again, braver this time. She talked about hiding in her room, about the way Mom's silence hurt more than Dad's shouts. "I don't want to go back," she said, her voice clear despite the tremble. The judge listened, her face unreadable, but I saw her glance at Mom, at the tears that dried too quickly. The ruling came the next day. Custody remained with the state. Dad's face crumpled, not with sadness, but with rage, quickly hidden. Mom didn't look at us, just walked out, her heels clicking on the floor. Relief hit me like a wave, but it was bittersweet. They were still our parents, still the only family we'd known, and cutting them out felt like losing a limb, even if it was infected. That night, Lily and I sat on the Wilsons' porch, the stars bright above us. "What happens now?" she asked. I didn't have all the answers, but for the first time, I felt like we had a chance. "We keep going," I said. "We make our own family." She leaned against me, her head on my shoulder, and I knew I'd fight for her forever. I started planning for the future, not just surviving, but living. I applied for scholarships, wrote essays about resilience, about music as salvation. The Wilsons offered to help with college applications, their pride in me a warmth I wasn't used to. Jake and Sarah were there too, my anchors, reminding me I wasn't alone. A year later, the bruise on my jaw was gone, but the scars inside lingered, faint but permanent. Lily and I were still with the Wilsons, who'd started talking about adoption, a word that felt like a gift and a weight. We weren't their kids, not really, but they treated us like we were, and that was more than Dad or Mom ever did. I graduated high school with honors, a shock to no one more than me. Mr. Callahan was there, clapping like a proud dad, and Sarah hugged me so tight I couldn't breathe. Jake handed me a new guitar, a secondhand beauty he'd saved up for, and I nearly cried right there on the stage. That night, I played for Lily, a song I'd written about breaking free, about wings and cages and skies that go on forever. She sang along, her voice soft but sure, and I knew we'd made it through the worst. Dad and Mom faded from our lives. They didn't fight the custody ruling, didn't call, didn't show up. Part of me was relieved, but another part mourned the parents they could have been. I wrote about it, pages and pages of grief and rage, and sent a few to a local literary magazine. They published one, and seeing my name in print felt like a victory, like I'd taken something broken and made it whole. Lily thrived. Her art won awards. Her smile lit up rooms, and she started talking about becoming a teacher, someone who could help kids like us. The Wilsons beamed when she spoke, their pride a quiet, steady thing. I was proud too, but more than that, I was grateful. She'd carried me as much as I'd carried her. Her strength a light I hadn't expected. I got into a state college with a scholarship, majoring in English, with plans to write and maybe teach. The Wilsons helped me move into my dorm, their hugs lingering like they were afraid to let go. Lily gave me one of her paintings, those two birds now soaring over a bright horizon. For luck, she said, and I hung it above my desk, a reminder of where we'd been and where we were going. The past still haunted me sometimes. A loud voice in a crowd, a laugh too sharp, and I'd be back in that dining room, my jaw throbbing, Mom's wine glass glinting. But those moments were fewer now, drowned out by music, by Lily's laughter, by the life we were building. I kept writing, kept playing, kept loving the people who loved me back. One night, I got a letter from Mom. No return address, just her handwriting, shaky and unfamiliar. "I'm sorry," it said, followed by excuses, explanations I didn't want. I read it once, then burned it in the Wilsons' backyard, the flames eating her words. Lily watched, her face calm. "We don't need her," she said, and I nodded. We didn't. We had each other. The future wasn't perfect, but it was ours. I'd learned to speak again, not just with words, but with music, with stories, with the way I lived. Dad's fist and Mom's laugh had tried to silence me, but they'd failed. I was still here, still fighting, still Ethan. And with Lily by my side, I knew we'd keep soaring, no matter what storms came next.